Hi, this is the third part of my Song of Ice and Fire video blog, and as promised this part's going to be on R+L J. The video is going to have to be in two parts to keep the length down, so I apologise for that. If you don't know what the theory is, one, if you want to know, look it up on tarotthehand.com where there's a very good outline, because I'm not going to go into it. And if you don't want to know what it is, don't watch this, because you'll find out, and it is a big spoiler. I'm going to do three sections basically. One covering the evidence and what I think of it. One covering how I think it can be revealed, should it be true. And three, my overall feelings. And the first part's just going to be on the evidence. I think you can divide the evidence into two parts, is the first thing to say. There is the evidence that there was a relationship between Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark, and it was not simply an abduction and rape, as some people thought it was, and the thinking of that was what triggered the war, and that they had a child, and by extension that child is Jon Snow. Now the first part I think is almost irrefutable. I think it would be totally out of character for Rhaegar based on what we know about him, and I think the evidence is just too strong that there was a reciprocated love between the two characters. So I'm going to conclude that that's the case. The problem I have is that I'm unconvinced that they've had a child, and that I'm even less convinced that that's Jon Snow. The evidence for that is much more circumstantial. It's much more, it can be interpreted as portraying that, rather than the only conclusion you can derive from this is that Jon Snow is the child of the two of them. And there are even a couple of flaws in my mind with the evidence itself. The first is one of the supposedly clinching things for the theory, which is the King's Guard at the Tower of Joy. Now there are two flaws for my mind. One is how they would know, and two, their actual actions. Now the theory goes that because Rhaegar and Sir Arthur Dayne were best friends, that Rhaegar could have told Sir Arthur, and that was what they were doing there. Yes, he might. I don't have any problems with that. My problem is that Varys almost certainly would have found out about it. It's possible they could have kept it secret, but that would have been pretty much a first amongst the Red Keep. And that Varys very clearly is a Targaryen supporter. We know this from his actions in supporting Viserys and Daenerys in their exile, and from his meeting with Illyria Mopatis below the Red Keep, who is also a known Targaryen supporter. So, if Varys knew, okay, he might be very good at hiding it, but you would have thought he would have at least done something to try and assist Jon, and certainly protect him, given that he did the same for Daenerys and Viserys. So that's one problem. A bigger problem for me is the actions of the King's Guard themselves, in that when Ned Stark, Howland Reed and his other cohorts turned up at the Tower of Joy, they're standing outside. Now, it would seem unlikely that the child had not been born at this point, because as soon as the fight's over, Ned goes in, finds Lyanna dying, and then leaves. That seems extremely unlikely if the baby's as yet unborn. Or if it is born, if it is unborn, why are they just leaving her there? Why not try desperately to move her? Yes, it might cost her a life, but if Robert Baratheon turns up, not Ned Stark, well, that's going to happen anyway. If the baby is born, which seems much more likely considering if the theory is correct, Ned left almost immediately afterwards with the baby. Why are they not taking that child and running like smoke and oakum? Because the child's life is certainly in danger. What happens to all of the other Targaryens suggests that beyond doubt. But they're not, they're standing outside. you would have thought they'd want to get him certainly out of the line of fire, if not out of Westeros itself, but they don't. Now, given that they have abandoned Aegon, who is the heir apparent, and Viserys, who is the heir after that, if the line of succession follows a British model, why wouldn't they be willing to go that extra step and take him away, keep him safe? Because it doesn't seem very safe to, with a handful of men, stand outside a tower and hope that's going to do everything. Because if nobody turns up, you're buggered. Whereas if you're running, you've got a much better chance. The second problem I have with the evidence is that a considerable amount of it comes from Daenerys' visions in the House of the Undying, or from Bran's visions, or for that matter for a number of other ones. Now, yes, some of the visions that people have had come to pass. One of the most graphic ones being Daenerys' vision of Robb Stark, or the king, headless, and his head replaced by that of a wolf. Well, that happened, of course. But a lot of prophecies and visions have not come true, the most obvious being Daenerys' son, who was supposed to be the stallion that mounts the world, and then he died in utero. So I don't think we can trust visions, because they have such a pattern of not coming true. And prophecy in general. The other problem with those things is they're largely ambiguous. Yes, you could interpret them that way, you can interpret them another way. So that's what I think about the evidence itself. Now, the rest of it's pretty good, but it's still fairly ambiguous. But I'm going to come to that in the second part of the video. So if you're still interested, go and watch the second part now.